you don't need an epic story to have an epic story. And I think about that a lot. Sometimes we don't even give ourselves a chance because we already remove ourselves from the list. It's like, well, when I do this, then it's epic enough. Then it's shareable. Then I'll be in a position. And that's just not how it works. And I get angry. I mean, honestly, it like drives me. It's like, it's because so many people are sitting on such amazing ideas. And honestly, it's usually the people that are quieter and the people that are not visible that we need to hear from you, and especially now, like in marginalized communities, women, all this stuff, is under threat in a real way. It is. And so it's like, oh my God, if there was ever a time to, you know what, like, please, now is not the time to be quiet and to like watch from the sidelines. We need you in there. We need your idea and your thoughts. And we need people that don't look homogenous and the same. And that's how we actually build bridges. And so I think that's what I would say is like, if you're sitting there thinking that you are an outsider, great.
Welcome to Side Note, the podcast, where we explore the intersection of business and intuition. I'm your host, Samantha Fackler, a Fortune 100 marketing advisor turned leadership coach who has worked with over 100 companies across 13 years and counting. And yes, I also keep crystals on my desk, I love astrology, and I'm a trained Reiki master. So I see the connections that other people miss. Join me for conversations that'll change how you think about business, life, and everything in between. Welcome to today's show. Our guest, Patrice Poltzer, is here. She is a storytelling master as well as an AI strategist. Patrice, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. And there's so many different things that I want to get into with you. But to start off, can you please give our audience just a little intro of who you are?
I'm a recent transplant from Brooklyn, New York to Lisbon, Portugal. I moved with my 3 boys and my husband, very unhinged, about a year and a half ago. So I literally started from scratch. We didn't know anyone here in Portugal. It was a move for adventure. It was not for work. It wasn't for family. So my life in the past year and a half has been quite different than it was when I was living in New York. I burned a business to the ground last year. It was a lot of, in like the most cliche sense, like lots of rebirth. And I've never really said that, but it is just new friends, new language, new everything, and really having to think differently about my business and my business models. Yeah. But formerly I come from television. So I was a Today Show producer for many years, originally from the Midwest. So I am a Midwest girl at heart. And spent 13 years in New York City and in the media. So Today Show was my longest job, but I was at Bloomberg TV. We like to repress that. I had a little startup stint somewhere along those lines that was cliche and horrific, but led me to starting my own business because I didn't have enough self-esteem to go interview back in corporate America when I had a newborn and a toddler at the time. So anyway, I just vomited a lot at you. So we can start anywhere, but that's like a cliff notes for where I am right now.
Yeah. And I'm curious about the business piece because I think when we go through massive transitions like that, especially yours, I mean, new place, new language, new people, like you said, we change. And so that is going to impact our business in some ways. What does your business look like today versus when you were in New York?
Oh God, it's I want to say it's kind of gone through a few beats. I think there's this misnomer, at least I did. I always thought before I actually had a business that you had to be born knowing that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. I mean, people that had their own businesses, like, I had a lemonade stand. I mean, you hear that same story. I never had a lemonade stand. Never. What are you talking about? It never even crossed my mind. Like, even when I had my second baby and I was just got laid off from a startup, it never crossed my mind that I would start something. I only wanted to get back to media. That was what I wanted to do. So I think the bigger kind of aha moment that I have is that your life is just a series of what you're doing right now. When I started my business, I came from TV. So I was producing, I was interviewing people, I was very into digital. So I had a friend who had a business, and this is in 2017. So it's a while ago. This was when video was just starting to become like not a nice to have, but a need to have. And I knew how to shoot video and edit, which now everyone does. But I feel like back in 2017, I mean, not everyone knew how to edit, right? He's like, can you make a video for me for my website? And I was like, oh God, no, I did not want to do that because I was like, I'm getting back to, I don't even know what I was getting myself back to, but I said yes. But because I came from the Today Show, I had that instant credibility. So I started getting video jobs, which I didn't really want, if I'm being honest. But I was like, I got to heal my esteem. And I have a baby, I have a toddler, I'm living in New York City. My husband took a career risk. It was, we don't come from money. It was like, I need to get my butt working. So it became this, well, I'll go back to corporate America next month. And then that turned, well, next month. And then all of a sudden, a year later, and you're like, oh my God, I think I have a video company. And so that's what I did for many years. I ran a video company, no idea what I was doing. I basically gave videos for free. Like people would be like, how much? I'm like, I don't know, $100. I mean, I was just so stupid. I just didn't know. And I never aspired to do that. So there was a huge disconnect for me until one day this is kind of interesting. I was at a networking group. I'm like, I have to figure something out because I was on the outside. It looked like I was killing it because I was getting like these fancy clients, like Lululemon hired me to do something, and I got to do something at NASDAQ. And, at the time, people would be like, oh my God, like you are just killing it. I'm like, I am literally going bankrupt. I make no money. And but at the time I was just so disconnected because I'm like, this is not my real job. Like, I'm just going to go back to media. Like, this is just my stopgap. And then finally I met this woman, and she was a business coach. And I had never even knew there were business coaches. And she's like, when are you going to just like stop it? Like, why are you calling yourself freelancing? I would always call myself, well, I'm just a freelancer. I'm a freelance, I'm freelance video. She's like, stop saying that. She goes, stop saying you're freelancer. She goes, no, you're not. You're a founder. Like, you own this video business, and maybe this is not your forever business. Start acting like it because you're not. And it was like that. And then there was one more incident. This literally shifted me. I met this girl in New York, and she was the daughter of like this big real estate guy. And they're like, we want you to come. They had this big like investor party in the Hamptons, and she's like, I want you, like, you are doing it. I love you. We connected, she liked the storytelling part. And at the time I was just word of mouth. So my website, I mean, it was like me with a giraffe pregnant. I'm not joking you. That was my home screen. It was so weird and uncomfortable. And I didn't think it because I wasn't like thinking business. I was just, website. And it was like funny, but it's not funny. I was like, kind of self-deprecating on the website. And I remember it did not cross my brain that she would have to pitch me to a room. And what I thought was this shoe-in, it was like, going to be good money. And I was going to go to the Hamptons and shoot this party I remember I didn't get this job. And she had the decency, because we kind of started to be friends, just like professionally. She goes, can I just be direct with you? And I said, of course. What? She's like, what in the actual fuck is your website? She goes, what the hell is your website? She goes, I didn't really realize that. Like, I didn't, like, before I pitched you, I just assumed like you're the Today Show, and I met this cool girl and I want to use her and she's going to come with us. And I'm like, you showed my website? She goes, well, yeah. And I was like, oh my God. So anyway, sort of like made me level up, even though I didn't really want to be a video producer, if that makes sense. That was not really my jam.
Yeah, it sounds like you fell into your business. Like, there was demand, you were doing it. It was going to be temporary, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I have a business.
100%. And I could not like separate myself from, well, this is not really what I do. Like, it was just such a disconnect. Also too, you got to think in New York production world, it's all dudes. So Also, like, people be like, what camera should I use? I'm like, I have no idea. And I'm running a video company. So people would ask me all these questions and I literally had no idea. I'd be like, no, I just keep it on one setting. And if it messes up, like, I literally call my friend Michael and I'm like, what do I change? I mean, it was so just ad hoc. And so I never felt like, well, I'm not passionate about gear. So I told myself a story that because I was not passionate about microphones and camera angles, then that doesn't mean that makes me not credible.
No, I think that's an interesting spot to pause at, because what I find is that we get stuck in our prior identity. So
Yes.
we think of ourselves as, this Today Show producer. So this thing that I'm doing now, well, I don't know. I don't know where it's going. It's kind of an experiment. And I ran into that myself too. When I became a coach, I was like, well, I spent 13 years in marketing. Am I really a coach? Am I passionate about the coaching art and science? I'm interested in it, but I'm most passionate about speaking to women business owners about what's going on and telling them things like, "Hey, why are you calling yourself a freelancer? Time to update the website, time to get more strategic, all that stuff." That's what I live for. So it's so interesting to see how it unfolded. What was the moment that you were like, "I am a business owner and I feel this and it's going well"?
Oh God. I mean, I was always a business owner, right? I mean, but it took me many years to match what I was making in corporate. I think you tend to see all this stuff on social, like, I made $100,000 this month or whatever. And you're just like, what is going on? Because I couldn't like put it together. So, even I think when I finally surpassed my last salary, what I was making in corporate, that to me was like, oh, okay. But that took me like 2021. So that took me 4 years to really get to that point where I'm past my salary. So I think like
For you.
I started feeling, oh, okay, I'm not a fraud, because it's also too, it is such a female thing. It's not a female thing. It's an everyone thing, but unfortunately I feel like it's branded as a female thing. Like, men also
Yeah.
feel like uncomfortable, but it's just not branded in the same way that, like, I think it is for women
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
But I, again, like, when COVID was a huge shift, because that shut down my business, because it shut down all the production. And again, I was pregnant with my husband, again, it always seems like every life, like, just low moment happens when I'm like something with the business. And so in 2020, I wasn't on Instagram, like, I wasn't on anything. I mean, I had like a personal photo album, but I remember I just had this feeling in myself that I'm like, I have to get online. Like, and I didn't know, and it sounds crazy now because we know kind of what that means to be online, but
Right.
and if you came from corporate, like, when you're in corporate, I did not know that you could make money online. Like, I was so in my 30 Rock world. I was so in my like clients and going to offices and shooting and like, I use the internet like I did not know. It sounds crazy, but I did not understand that there was an entire industry of knowledge, right? Of like people paying for knowledge and courses and in digital products. So I remember in 2020, again, I met a woman online, and I didn't, and she changed my life. Like, she literally changed my life. She's the only reason that everything kind of started from her. She kind of made me see that there was this whole other world online. And I met her through the DMs, and I loved her content. And I didn't even know what she did. But she's an expert marketer. And the next thing I know, I'm on a Zoom call with her, giving her $10,000 for a mastermind. And, it sounds insane, but I, I just felt in my gut that I need to give this stranger this money. I just felt it. And so I did a mastermind at the top of 2020. So before COVID, and she taught me how to sell. She taught me like the idea of getting an Instagram account and using it for marketing. She really taught me all the foundational elements of online business that I still take with me to this day. I remember when I met her, and she's like, you should join my mastermind. I work with service-based female entrepreneurs and I help them monetize their knowledge online. And I'm like, can you say that in English? Like, it was just the weirdest. And she goes, I go, I make videos. Like, what are you talking about? Like, service, like I was like very precious. I'm like, I make videos, custom videos. I don't teach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a coach, all that stuff. And she goes, she's like, you are not seeing it. You're not seeing the vision. She goes, you're a storyteller. She goes, people need to know how to storytell. She goes, there's a whole industry here that you're not part of because you haven't had to be a part of it. And she really made me realize that, like, for example, she had a different circumstances growing up, right? Lived in the middle of America, like didn't go, live on the coast or didn't have access in the same way, had to escape the Mormon church, was told to have babies at 19. Like, her life experience was so different. So if she wanted to do stuff, she had to do that online, right? Not the traditional way of going to college. You move to New York City or you move to Chicago or LA.
Right. You meet people, you get in the room.
Yeah.
You
So
climb the ladder.
Exactly. And so she was 29 years old and she was rocking. I mean, I paid $10,000 for her mastermind. She's running like 6 of them at a time. Like, this woman was raking it before it was like, she was right before everyone did it. She was already doing it in, 2016. She changed everything for me. So she taught me like how to do a Zoom boot camp. So I remember March of 2020, 1 week before COVID, I had opened my Instagram. I had like 100, like 200 followers, or half of them were my family. And I started talking about this Zoom boot camp about video. And I had 8 strangers give me $149. I thought I was a millionaire. It completely shifted everything. It was like, oh my God, I just made $800 on the internet. And that was 2020 March. And then basically since then, I have just been honing and launching and programs and all live and still doing video. So anyway, it's just like, it's amazing how there are, like, when you look back, there's usually key people that it's all been under tough love stuff of like, why aren't you leveling up? Why are you saying you're a freelancer? And this other woman is like, you're stupid. Like, you could be making $20 million and you're like running around with your tripod. I'm like, so you know what I mean? So anyway, like, there's certain people that really allowed me to see possibility. And that's all you need sometimes. It's just a little inkling, and then you can run with it.
I have seen massive changes from just one question, just a few words, and then all of a sudden it like breaks open this whole world. And I think the online space, I mean, getting in there right at the beginning of 2020 is amazing, because that's when it really, I think it like took off in a whole new way for businesses. All of a sudden, personal brands were a thing, and
Yes.
brands had to be online, and definitely had to be online. And there were so many different ways of providing your services online. And now it's all over the place.
It's all, yes, but that was a good time. I mean, I was still even late to it, but even me getting in on 2020, I mean, I was still in it at a good time to get in on it, where people, the whole industry's changed. It's not the same industry at all than when I was in there, 2020.
Yeah. And for people now who are a little afraid to get into the online space, maybe they have a business, maybe they're interested in adding like a coaching element to their business. What would you say to those people? Because it does feel saturated now.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. In some way, it's easier because this may or may not be what people already may know, but most of us are not trying to be Netflix. We are not trying to be everything to everyone. And because now I live in Lisbon now and I run a business like basically from my laptop. You don't need to be, we're like agnostic location. Your audience is expanded. So if you're passionate, and by the way, like, passion is not something that I like recommend, like, necessarily always having a business on, but like whatever like whatever you are, and everyone's an expert in something, right? Even if you're a couple years ahead of someone, you're an expert to someone, right? So, like you should never not do something because you think it's saturated. Like there's always, the coaching industry is only getting bigger. Like there's new health coaches. It's actually, this is a good story. I was on LinkedIn today. This woman popped up on my feed. I had no idea who she was. And her post was so awesome. It was like a carousel. I was like reading the guide. I'm like, God, this is so good. And went to her bio, and she's a health coach in New York. And her bio reads like any other health coach that you might read, like longevity and wellness from
Vitality.
within.
Yeah.
She had her content is like her. It's like a specific point of view, and it's edgy. So again, you can't think like that. If you're already thinking like that, you're dead in the water, because you have to just kind of have that like gusto, naivete, or whatever you call it. Like you have to have an element of that enthusiasm. Otherwise you will not make it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I tend to share in those conversations too, is like, you are unique. Yes, whatever thing you might see it as saturated. Maybe I don't necessarily believe that. Like the podcast space, for instance, people think like, oh, everyone and their mother has a podcast. Well, no one actually makes it past like 10 to 20 episodes of their podcast. So like if you make it past 20 episodes, I think you're automatically in the top 3% of all podcasts.
Yeah. And also like it's the same thing too. Like for example, okay, take like an Amy Porterfield, right? Like most people know Amy Porterfield. She's like the OG course lady. And if you could say, oh God, well, Amy Porterfield is like, she owns it, right? What's the point of even getting into that space? So I am part of a membership, and I have been for the past 2 years, from a woman who, for all intensive purposes, teaches the same thing that Amy Porterfield does. But this other person is my person. Like I relate to her. Like Amy Porterfield is almost, sometimes you're too far ahead. So like I'm not related to, like she's not relatable to me. And this other person is like, she's just kind of, she's just she puts it out there, and like I just feel like we're very similar. Our energies are similar. So again, sure, I could go to Amy and she's credible, and I know everyone does her course, school, whatever. When I was last year in my business, a year and a half ago, when I was really interested in learning how to do evergreen funnels, because I've never had that. I'm always live. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta have some different streams here. I was figuring out where to invest. Like, what do I do? Like, where should I put my money? And it's amazing. Like this other woman that I'm with has like a fraction of her following, but man, it's the best money I've ever spent. So again, it's like, she's my person, but someone else, Amy, is their person,
Yes. Everyone's unique kind of, I call it like their energetic signature. Like that is what draws their people to them. And I think there are a ton of brilliant people out there who don't have a huge following, but they have some sort of like magic spin just based on who they are that draws you in and then changes your life, the way you run your business, creates massive impact for you.
And if you think about it, and look, this is like a whole other conversation. There are people that are just really good at social. There are people that are just gifted at the hooks. They are gifted at like that kind of sexy, instantaneous, right? And so they maybe have a lot of followers, but like they're not making a dime, or they make negative $0 from an email list, because guess what? Your email list is hidden. Your email list is like, that's really where a lot of the gold is and the magic, and you own that, right? So again, we have to, and also there's so many people that engage in, you just don't know, right? So it's so classic, but it can be really intimidating if you're starting and you're like, oh my God, this person has 100,000 followers, but it's like, I can't tell you, I've been coaching women and entrepreneurs and story for a long time now. I run group programs. I do lots of things, private coaching clients. It is wild how some of my clients who have massive social media followings, they are not making money, like they're not converting. Following is one thing, but actually being invested and connecting is another thing. And that's not always to do with metric numbers. And I have a good example. Like I have a private client right now. He's a guy, he's a male founder, and he's wildly successful. And he came to me like 10, 11 months ago. I even know he subscribed to my newsletter, and it was like 2 lines. He's like, I love all your stuff. He goes, I read all your stuff. He goes, and I need to get on LinkedIn. He goes, can you help? What's that look like? And I'm not like a LinkedIn, like that's not my jam, but storytelling is my jam, right? Like anything that touches storytelling. So again, I've been working with him now for 10 months. We went from, we're going to post, 5 times a week to 3 to 2 to if I get him to do 1. But here's the thing, it's quality. And finally, it's starting to hit. Business Insider reached out to him last week because they saw a LinkedIn post and they want to feature him. He's a headliner at this Austin conference for his industry next to people that like everyone knows. Like, and again, it's like, but the way we're doing it, he doesn't care about because I will often tell him like, well, maybe we should shorten this so it looks like this. He's like, but that I don't want to be like a tech bro that like rates like that.
Yeah. With emojis and bullet points.
Yeah. Or like, short phrases and like, we all know all the LinkedIn posts. I'm like so in LinkedIn now. It's like a whole new world, but
we have to talk about LinkedIn for a second.
Oh my God, I can't. Yeah. But anyway, but my point is like, he's newbie. Like he's like a newbie, like in that space, and he doesn't have a lot of followers, like anything, but he is an expert. He's a badass business owner, and he's been behind the scenes for a long time, and he focuses on quality. He doesn't care. Like, honestly, he's like, he will not post a second post in a week if he thinks that we're doing it just to like get a second post. Genuinely. It's sometimes frustrating because I'm just like, there are algorithms here, like a little bit, but he's like, no, I don't care. Like that's not what I want to do. So my point is, he's so in his self, and he's so in his truth and what he believes in and how he believes in what he believes as a leader and human. And like, that is attractive. And so that comes out. And he's starting to realize that like him putting himself out there, it's not ego. It's actually, you're giving other people possibility, right? Or showing people a different way. So I think for people that are starting or nervous, you kind of have to flip your script and make it not about metrics and followers, but really be proud of what you're putting out there. And if that's only 1 post every 2 weeks in the beginning, then that's okay. Like this is a long game, right? For most people.
Yeah. In truth, I think I did a workshop recently on like lead generation and storytelling online and all this stuff. A lot of people, actually the people in the room were fantastic, really successful coaches, absolutely zero online presence because they've been doing this for 10, 20 years. And they're like, I don't know, I need to start posting on LinkedIn, but I like feel the cringe anytime I see like a confessional style LinkedIn post. Why is that happening all the time? And I was like, well, there's a push for people to become better storytellers online. It's proven that people actually find meaning in stories. We're attracted to them. We want to read stories rather than like a how-to 5-step type post thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the difference between, what I was speaking to was, I really encourage this group to like share your truth. When you show up just as you, like that holds a frequency to it. And I really believe that people will react to that, especially over time. You hone that, you refine the way that you tell your stories and express that truth.
Correct.
But what is the difference, in your opinion, between the cringy LinkedIn posts that we all know and see and do not like and just immediately want to scroll past, makes me want to throw up?
I know.
And
same.
the posts like your clients and yourself where they hit and people connect with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like that human intuition, right? It's like being online every day or being in someone's face or being, let's say, a YouTuber and a vlogger, and you might see that person every day. That doesn't mean you're being vulnerable. That doesn't mean you're being real. Like being real is not being in someone's face all the time. And you can sense that. People are smarter now. You know when you're watching something and you're like, oh, you get that spidey sense of like, this doesn't feel genuine or it feels off. And I believe that, the LinkedIn or that type of stuff, that's like the LinkedIn version of the video. And really the difference is that when someone's being vulnerable for vulnerability's sake, because they're like, it's a buzzword, or I got to be vulnerable and I got to like talk about a tragedy. Like being vulnerable is not vomiting all your hard stuff and vomiting all your skeletons. Being vulnerable is actually acknowledging your role, even in the bad situation. So let me give you an example. I used to do a lot of Instagram lives. I would interview various people. And one of my questions before they would come on my Instagram live, I would say like, can you share a moment of struggle? And then the follow-up question is, can you tell me your role? Like, what was your role in that? Like, how did you contribute to that hard thing? Because that's an uncomfortable question, because it takes a certain amount of introspection, and that takes a certain amount of accountability and responsibility, which most people don't want to do. And also sometimes you're not through it enough to be there. But I had a woman, she lived in my neighborhood. We knew each other very well through different professional circles. And she's like, I want to be on your Instagram. I'm like, great. And she's like, I'm going to talk about this. And it was about some client that was terrible and treating her bad and a woman bad. I'm like, great. We can chat about that. How did you contribute to that? Like, what was your role in that going so bad? And it was like, she's like, well, that was not me. And I'm like, I can't have you on my LinkedIn or my Instagram. Like, so my point is, get it. That is the difference, because most people don't go there because it's uncomfortable. And so that is what we're feeling. I feel like when I see LinkedIn posts that I'm like, this is phony. Like it's phony, or it's for the sake of, it's like trauma talk, right? It's like for the sake of, yeah. But humans, it's like, how you meet people and you're like, you don't even know them, but you're like, they make you feel good. Or they're like, I have an energy, and you're like, I just want to be around that person. Or there are people like, for example, Jara Bean, who I've never met in my life. I listened to the episode with her on it. Like, she's one of my favorite follows. Like, I don't know her, but you just know by watching her and reading her post, she is exactly how she is online as she would be offline. Like, there are people that you just know. And that's it. It's like, you just know from LinkedIn. Like, there are people that when you're pouring out your stuff, like, they're real, they're cool. So that's the line. And I think it goes back to like, well, why are you doing this? So to go back to my client, he's not doing this because he wants 10,000, a million followers on LinkedIn. He doesn't have that. He's got like under 5,000. He's like, I'm just interested in meeting quality people. I want to have quality relationships in my industry. I want to go to industry stuff and be known for like forwarding my industry in this way. He's so committed to what he really wants to do and why he's making content. It is not an ego play. And so that is where what we see a lot of this now is like, what are you bringing to the table? Like, who are you servicing? What is this for? Why do we need to, which is also goes into the AI stuff. But like, anyway, that was a really long-winded answer to your question, but I just have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah. A lot of stories. You're a storyteller with a lot of stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think the why piece is important. I think also what people struggle with, what I've noticed, and I've gone through this too, is just being online is different. Like if I'm meeting someone in person, it's natural. I'm going to be myself. But when you start typing, then the fear of judgment starts to come in, or the fact that this is going out to a ton of people that you don't know. It's like those little psychological things start to play a role. And then all of a sudden your authenticity doesn't feel as authentic anymore.
Totally. So this is like this is a really good jump point here, because that what you just described is the crux of so many people, right? We are biased. We are unable to see ourselves for usually how epic we are, right? We undermine our achievements. We think we're boring. We think we're not that interesting. We think a struggle that we went through, it's like, well, who cares? Like anyone would have done that. We're biased. And so, I run these programs called Founders Fire, where you're with some of, like, I have like an Apple like leader in my cohort right now. And it is wild. Like, you're like at the pinnacle of like your career. And yet all these things that humans tell themselves, like, well, that's not special. So actually AI, this unlikely, unbelievable tool that I have incorporated in a big way. I've gotten really into it as a storyteller, which seems counterintuitive, but the way I'm using it, and I built a tool, it is helping people remove their biases. So what I'm hearing is that when used properly, AI can actually be a mirror to who you really are. And like, sometimes you just need validation before you get the courage to go hit publish. And and not everyone has a coach on demand. Sure, you can text your friends, but it's like, used in the way that I'm using it it's unbelievable. Like, you have people that are, all those thoughts that are going through their head are now using it in a way that it's like, oh, let's go. Like, I'm good. Like, oh, wow. Like, okay. Like, someone needs to hear me today. So I feel like we don't hear about that part of AI a lot. We hear about all the negative stuff, but I'm seeing just a lot of positive.
Yeah. And I think with AI, your outputs are only as good as your inputs. So if you can get creative with your inputs and be really intentional about them to help you with whatever is coming up, it can be hugely transformative.
Totally. Yes.
I wanted to talk about one LinkedIn post that you also shared.
Yeah.
About your hearing loss and how it all of a sudden led to like millions of impressions.
It went viral.
It went viral. Yeah, which is wild. But that's the type of thing where it's like, it's personal. And what was the moment that you're like, I feel called to share this?
Yeah. Oh my God, it's such a good question. So I've had a hearing loss my whole life, and it's been something that I've always kept. Obviously, you can't hide it. Like, my inner circle knows. But I was in New York media. I was at the Today Show. I was young. I was like wanting to crawl my way up. And, that's a tough industry. It's a tough business. So at the time, I was like, any reason for someone to think that you can't do your job, there's a line waiting for your job, or that's the energy that they want you to think. That's not true,
Right.
but maybe a little true. So anyway, so there was an incident at the show. I was really new, and I was like, I kept to such great lengths. I would never wear my hair up. I just never like it was just like I was so self-conscious. And I'll be honest with you, I started feeling a little fraudulent. So I run workshops and I run masterminds, and I run them with founders and people like yourself, and people that we tell, what is your big why story, like that big mission driven story. And we put it to video. My team that I still have in New York, they edit. So I run these like twice a year. And I remember a woman last year was in my program, and she has been with me. Like, she's like basically like paid for a college tuition. Like, she's just taken every single thing I've ever put out there. Like, she's just like, whatever I do, she's like, I'll take. She's known me she's known me for a few years, right? Since like 2020, when I got into the online teaching world. And I remember I mentioned something casually about my hearing loss, and she's like, you have a hearing? She had no idea. And I've gone out with her. Like, I met her in New York, like nothing. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like I go, yeah, I have hearing aids. She's like, why didn't you ever tell me that? Like, that's like, you have hearing aids. And oh my God, like my kid has like all this stuff. She's like, and I kind of remember thinking, why that is maybe strange, as open as I am. And that's kind of weird to have hearing aids. How has that never come up in the 4 years where I've been in these really intimate spaces with her? And granted, I was the coach, so it's not me, but it's still like, it's like you share and you give back. Anyway, so I kind of just started being like this. I think like I just need to like tell the story. And I'm a video person, so I kind of just felt called one day. And I'm not joking you. I'm like this. I'm not trying to promo my tool, but I have a storytelling tool called my Story Pro. And it's my best friend. It's like my best business friend. It's my smartest business friend. And I remember I sat down with Pocket Patrice, and I started riffing with Pocket Patrice. And I'm like, I think I need to share this story. And I didn't even know how to like put it together. And Pocket Patrice was like, bam, bam. What about this angle? How about you do this? And and the next thing I know, I put it into the script, and I had a script, and I ran with it.
Okay. And what is Pocket Patrice?
Sorry. Pocket Patrice is the runaway. So when I moved to Lisbon, I didn't do as many video clients anymore. So I'm like, I have to be online. I have to make my money online. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to do evergreen and digital products, and people are going to buy it, and I'll be on a Lisbon beach with my cocktail. I mean, that didn't happen. So I started realizing like I thought I had a list problem. Like, my list is too small. I need to widen my list. And once I widen my list, then people are going to want to get in my funnels. and know about my storytelling programs. And that's the problem, because I have a small list, but I have a buyer list. But the problem is that a lot of people have bought like a lot of things from me. So I'm kind of was repackaging my curriculum and my workshops, and it was evergreen. But people are like, I've already bought like 4 of the 7 things. And so like, anyway, it just was not successful launch. It did like a quarter. I mean, yeah, it was just not a good launch. And that was my whole business plan last year. That was the strategy. I'm like, I'm going to go evergreen. I'm going to have this funnel of revenue here. I'll run I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So I was brainstorming with my online business manager. I need a lead magnet. I don't have a lead magnet. How do I not have a lead magnet? And so I go, but I don't want to do some boring PDF that just sits in someone's Gmail. Like, no one opens those. Like, I actually want something useful. And she's really into AI. So she's like, why don't I just build a storytelling free tool? We'll train it a bit. They'll give you, and then you send them their story post. And I'm like, so we built this free thing. It was not a product. It was just to build my list, to get new people in my funnel to buy all my storytelling stuff. Well, it worked. I did this thing, and I just happened to also be part of a summit that week. So I literally had like 4,000. I mean, it was insane. I've never had that many, but no one wanted my courses. They wanted they're like, oh my God. Cause it was like 3 uses, like 3 free uses. And that was it. People were like, where is this? How can I get this? So I pivoted my entire business strategy last year. I stopped everything, didn't do all my launches, nothing. And I built this platform, this storytelling space called My Story Pro. And it's like your marketing in a box. And you can go and you can brainstorm, and Pocket Patrice is like me. It's like coach. But it's trained very specifically. And it has my courses. And I just put all my courses and my program in there. And then so this is an AI, and I do a lot of AI training on how to use AI in a really thoughtful way for storytelling. So anyway, this is like a whole new business. I just started a new company this week with my online business manager, like who's like so much younger than me. And she's like amazing. I like pay her to be my boss. I always joke. And now we're co-founders. So it's like this
cool
total shift where, she still runs my video storytelling side. It's a lot. Yeah. It's like I'm building the plane while we're flying, but it's going, I've done like no marketing. We launched it Black Friday. It's a reoccurring monthly product. People are obsessed. Like people get obsessed with it. Like I'm not joking you. Yeah. So anyway, like that's what Pocket Patrice is. She's like a coaching version of me that'll like tell it to you straight about if your stuff is bad and help you have those dot connecting moments of like, wait, talk. So that's where the hearing aid story came from Pocket Patrice. And it was the first time I was able to get out of my own head and my own bias when I saw Pocket Patrice being like, this is amazing. I think you need to do this. I was like talking to her and I'm like, oh, okay. And it ended up going viral. It was crazy what that posted.
Yeah. I think it's key to get out of your head. And I think that's the beauty of using tools and resources and talking with other people, working with other people. I see so many entrepreneurs get stuck in their head and then they think they can just use Claude to like help them write some posts. And they have no idea how to use AI where they can still keep their authentic voice. And it doesn't seem like AI, which is, I think, where a lot of cringe comes in for people.
Also, this is not that. Like, I'll have people be like, can you just write them? I'm like, no, that's not the point. Pocket Patrice is like, if you ask her, hey, I need to write a post on lead generation for social media on LinkedIn, she will be like, sit back down, girl. Like, absolutely not. Like, and that's what we did that by design, because I'm not interested in flooding the world with shitty content, like shittier content. Yeah. Like there's so much crap right now that's not the aim. The aim is to help people be themselves and to be human. And most people need a little help with that. That's hard to do. Like if you don't know how to do it.
Right. When it's new, the online space is new to you. I mean, like I was not an online person, really, to be honest. Like I had an Instagram, but I barely used it. And
Wait, how did
now
you
I'm
do
on it
this
way
podcast?
more.
Like, what's yours? Like, when did you start doing this podcast? Or like, tell me a little bit about. I know this is about, but I'm just give me a little bit of a cliff note. Like, what's your little journey?
Yeah. So I was in marketing for 13 years, like huge companies, startups, agencies. And then my last marketing role, they asked me to start coaching the founders. And I fell in love with it because I felt like we went deeper and I got to integrate all of these different things that I did on the side. I was exploring like leadership and going to retreats and meditation and self discovery work, identity work. And so coaching was like this perfect intersection of the stuff that I was really passionate about outside of work and then my background.
Hey.
And eventually I left and I became a coach. I had some other businesses too, but that's when I was like, oh shit, I have to create a brand. And then I started on Instagram, worked with a designer. I'm still honestly figuring out Instagram, but eventually I realized, yeah, it's like a forever journey, I think. But the podcast, I actually always knew I wanted a podcast like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like really early on. I was like, I would love to have a podcast, but I felt like I didn't know what to talk about and who would even be interested in being a guest. And could I even do interviews? But the key for me is I love one-on-one conversations. Like that's why I'm a coach. I love coaching people. And so I experimented with Instagram live interviews and found that I totally loved it. And it's like, I just got to take the leap. And so I created the podcast. And now I'm like, I'm starting to say like, yes, I'm a coach and a podcast host. Like that is becoming part of my identity. And I love it.
I love it. That's awesome. And you're so smart to have a podcast because it's like, it's just richer. And I'm like a suburban mom now, like go figure. I moved from New York to like Lisbon, but I drive my kids to school, which I never did in New York. So now I listen to that's how I listened to your podcast actually with Jara, because she posted about it. And if people recommend, and I sent it to like my list and I'm like, oh, listen to this. So that's why I was like, when you reached out, I'm like, this is bizarre because I literally listened to that episode. And then I feel like a few weeks later you were in my inbox, but I didn't even put two and two together. And I was like, oh my God, I just listened to her podcast. So anyway, you're really smart because you just like, you have so many opportunities when you have something this intimate and personable and like you create richer relationships. It's just not as opticky because you never know how many podcasts do I listen to on binge, but the host probably doesn't have any idea.
Oh, no idea. We just see numbers. Like we're here for a conversation with our guests. We're present, we're listening, we're asking, building conversation, dialogue, but I don't know who's listening. So when I have friends that are like, yeah, I listen to your podcast, I love it. I'm like, no way. Tell me more. Do you have feedback?
You feel it every second. Just give me the play-by-play. Like, it's like validation is good. It feels nice.
Yeah. But as a podcast host and as someone who shows up online now, storytelling is my main focus. It's like, how do I talk about my experiences authentically, staying connected to my why, but making them interesting,
Yes. Wow. That's a great story. And also like really inspirational because so many people want to do something like that. And it's really easy to convince yourself not to do it. There's tons of reasons not to do it. Yeah. But it's like, okay, I mean, or you could like get hit by a car tomorrow and die. Like, you know what I mean? So I just feel that like that, it's like we're all moving anyway. So I think that's cool that you went all in.
Thank you. Yeah. I got to a point where I was like, I can't not go all in. If I don't go all in, I'm doing myself an injustice. So let's do it. Like, let's invest. Let's figure this out. And now we're in it.
Yay. So. Okay. That's very cool.
Yeah. But closing out here, I know we only have a couple minutes left together, but is there anything that you would want to leave with our audience? Any like anecdotes, messages?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I find myself saying to a lot of my storytelling students or clients is you don't need an epic story to have an epic story. And I think about that a lot. Sometimes we don't even give ourselves a chance because we already remove ourselves from the list. It's like, well, when I do this, then it's epic enough. Then it's shareable. Then I'll be in a position. And that's just not how it works. And I get angry. I mean, honestly, it like drives me. It's like, it's because so many people are sitting on such amazing ideas. And honestly, it's usually the people that are quieter and the people that are not visible that we need to hear from you, and especially now, like marginalized communities, women, all this stuff, is under threat in a real way. It is. And so it's like, oh my God, if there was ever a time to, like, please, now is not the time to be quiet and to like watch from the sidelines. We need you in there. We need your idea and your thoughts. And we need people that don't look homogenous and the same. And that's how we actually build bridges. And so I think that's what I would say is like, if you're sitting there thinking that you are an outsider, great. If you agree, great. We need more outsiders. We need more outsiders in different, perspectives, especially. And as a female, I feel that. And because now I am on, LinkedIn, which is a scary place, but I'm now in these AI tech circles. And this is new to me. And I'm like, well, who am I? Like, I'm a storytelling, like, journalist at the heart. Why am I? And then I'm like, oh my God, snap to it. Like, what do you mean? Like, these people know better. Like, AI has been around for like 2 years in a consumer way. Why do I think that person is better or knows more than me? We're all learning. And so I have to remind myself, like, not to feel, even if I feel like an outsider, I'm not an outsider. Like, I have a different perspective on AI. I'm coming at it from this way, not your way. And I think that's really important. Your perspective is important.
Absolutely. Your perspective, your story could be someone's lesson. So
totally. Yes.
With that, thank you so much, Patrice, for being on the show. You can find all of Patrice's stuff in the show notes. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Any last words?
No, all my kids just barged through, and I have a chef now. I mean, that's like that is not something I could ever do in New York, but European living is it's a different type of living. So that's also something else. If anyone's curious about like expat living or moving countries, I'm always open to answer questions on that as well, like through my DMs.
I know. I wanted to get to that, but maybe another episode or another time.
We'll do it. We'll keep it separate. Like, we'll do, like, if you
Perfect.
do another episode about like maybe massive transitions where you're like uprooting your entire life and burning it down and starting over, we can have that conversation if you're up. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Perfect.
Well,
okay. Well,
thank you so much, Patrice.
Okay.
Chat soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.